Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending this month's Monitoring Abnormal Activity webinar. Your instructor for today is Jim Vilker. We expect this presentation to last about an hour. As you joined us today, all phones were placed on mute to eliminate background noise and interruptions. To facilitate answering questions you have during the broadcast, we use the chat feature. You can find the chat feature by hovering over the bottom of the presentation screen. You should then see the toolbar with a series of icons. Click the one that says chat, then select to presenter and type your question. Questions may be sent at any time. We'll be stopping throughout the presentation to answer these questions. We appreciate your attendance today. With that, enjoy the presentation.
Thank you, Emily. Welcome, everyone. We've got a good dozen to 15 people on the conference today, and I'm going to delve deeply into the abnormal activity monitoring feature of the system, which I believe is one of the most underutilized features of the system. And I want to hopefully by the end of this presentation today make you much more comfortable with how to configure it and then how to actually work it as you're utilizing it. Unfortunately, this is one of those features that requires real data. I cannot go into Gold deeply, only because even in our training library, we don't have a lot of electronic transactional activity that I've gone through. And for the most part, as I'm running abnormal activity monitoring, as I did this morning, what I find is a lot of very blank screens. So I want to walk you through this more from a presentation mode. I will go out to Gold to show you a few features, a few nuances as it relates to how do I determine normality of what my members are doing. A lot of this came through and came about by the FFIEC supplement as it related to monitoring transactions that are occurring through third-party channels. That happened about 6 years ago, and obviously many of you have been tasked with, during BSA, AML examinations, how are you monitoring abnormal activity and are doing it on an ongoing basis. And this was our reaction to that and the feature functionality that was created. So this is about abnormality. Well, to determine abnormality, we need to get a handle on what is normal for our members. The tools that we recommend you go into as it relates to normality are tools 774 and 775. What you're seeing on these two tools is each origin on the system, origin being where did the transaction start? What channel did it come through to hit the member account? When you click on any one of these, what you would see is a high to low by member on which member had the most ATM transactions, the most ACH, those types of things. And that's really your first clue on what is normal. Every member doesn't have 500 ACH transactions. That's not where I would start as saying normal. But as you scan through those screens, maybe get halfway through and say, yeah, this is about where normal would be. Start there. Then, what I would also encourage you to do is go into, oh, my Gold session timed out. There we go. Go into Gold. And you can do this on any member, but try to get a member that uses you through a lot of different channels. You know they have ACH, you know they have debit card, they have a credit card with you. They're using home banking. And my team uses transaction activity, this button on the inquiry screen, a lot. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to uncover trends, maybe through the teller line, through the ACH system. Do we have a money service business? You know, a lot of those types of items just pop out at you when you're looking at these trends. And what this screen is showing you is the total debits and credits and the number of transactions for each origin. What a lot of credit unions miss when they get into this screen is, let's compare this screen to all members. Now when we start to compare it to all members, what you're going to see here are the averages for each one of those origins. So 3 different areas. The sampling, the 2 sampling tools I would definitely take a look at, and then take a look at transactional activity. And it doesn't matter which member you pick as long as the member uses you through a lot of different channels, because that all member average total that you're seeing right here is going to be the same for everyone. So that's how we start down this road, because you're going to go, well, when I start the configuration, what's high risk, what's not? My recommendation to you is, when I'm taking a look at debit and credit and home banking transactions, don't say that's the minimum. The population that you'll be working when you actually start to run the system is going to be much too large. You're going to want to take multiples of those averages to get to the high risk areas. The first thing you're going to do is take tool 101, and that's the abnormal monitoring config. You're going to start with member designation, and there's, generally speaking, we like to see at least 3 different groups built. Member individual, just the natural person member would be one group, and then any other ones of these that you feel would be like the normal member. Legal entity groups, which would contain trust companies, representative payees, guardianships. Those would be one, and corporate accounts would be the final one. Each one of those has different types of normality in the credit union. So you can't just create one group and say, now take a look at every different member designation we have on the system. From there, we're going to select our origins. So add an origin right down here. Once you've got the group, you've got your member designation selected here, you add the origin group, and then you start with ACH. These are the groups that AuditLink recommend, or these are the origins that AuditLink recommends you always have. ACH, ATM, wire transfer, credit card, and audio response or home banking. That would be the ones that we would consider are the ones that fall into that monitoring system. Those are, again, third-party channels, generally speaking, and those are really the ones that the FFIEC guided us to take a look at. But I just looked at a credit union that's using this extensively, Isabella Credit Union, and they have a separate group just for ACH, just for that, just to monitor, and they have different thresholds set up just for the ACH group than they do from the overall group. So don't think you can only have 3, 4, 5 groups. You may have 10 groups when you're done. No, I think that's would be a little overkill. But again, any type of third-party channel that you want to monitor, you even may want to pull out in and of itself. Once you select on ACH, you're going to define normal. And again, I would not use that transaction activity button. At least don't say that is normal. You would be surprised what normal is when you actually start to go through here. So think of it this way, and this is an actual setup. 35 ACH transactions up to an amount of $15,000 would be considered normal. You might think, that's not normal in my world, but what I always recommend is start high and go low. This is a reiterative process. You're going to set these configs once, you're going to run the system, and then you're going to see what pulls out. What you might see is it's all ACH and there's no debit cards there, or it's all credit cards and there's very few wire transfers sitting out there. You want to get a good mix as well. So set these up. Now, you know, I've talked to a lot of credit unions about this is kind of a guessing by golly, Jim. Well, not really. You are starting with some normality statistics from the prior tools that I've shown you, but the multiplier is where the guessing by golly comes into play. Again, when we get into the high risk categories, these should be multipliers of 2, 3, 4, even 5 to say high risk would be a multiplier of 5 from what we saw from the normal screens. So you would do that for these channels, and sorry, on mine I am missing the wire transfer tracking as well. The wire is only going to work, by the way, if your team is using the wire feature on the platform where you remove the funds from the member and enter all the specific wire out information. A group may look like this when you're done. In totality, if this would take you more than 30 minutes, call me. There's absolutely no reason why this should take very long. So you finish the configuration and you're ready to put it to work. So we go into tool 537 and we can click on the group type. That's the member group to monitor under the spyglass, 001 being the individual. You could call it natural person. There's a lot of different things you can call it. And then you can monitor transactions for current month, the prior month, and the prior 2 months going backwards. Now, this screen is the telltale if you did your job, if you configured correctly. If you see any more than 1% of your total member base in this high risk, your population is too large. You need to raise the thresholds. And that might be raise the thresholds. We got a lot of good ACH, or we got too many ACH. We didn't get enough debit card. You may go back and forth on this 3 or 4 times before you feel comfortable that you're getting the population. The goal of this is not to create a job. The goal of this is for you to immediately be able to see those members who are operating way off reservation. I mean, the outliers, the big outliers. See, you know, I would never guess that that member would have $534,000 in ACH transactions last month. Now, you say $534,000. Yeah, that's really what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for the member who had $30,000 in ACHs. I'm looking for those big outliers to say, I need to get curious and I need to understand what this individual is doing. Obviously, you have inquiry on here. You even have tracker review on this screen. So you can say, you know, are we monitoring them already? Is there a reason why somebody is looking at them? And you could actually go in and review the tracker record. From this screen, I can export this to a database. We added Member Connect. I'm not sure I really wanted to reach out to anybody based upon what I'm looking for. However, if you're somebody like Jeff Johnson or Keith Daniel, and they're using this, they might be using this to see, are there marketing opportunities here? These members are using us in different ways, and it's in a good way. And maybe I want to reach out to them through Member Connect, because with all compliance related analytics, you have to see, you know, in most people's worlds, that's the high risk side, but we got to create some ROI to what we do and say, oh, there might be a marketing side to this as well, by just simply reviewing the data. For first timers who have never done this before, you will be amazed at what you see. It pulls up things you would never guess. When we originally built the platform, we even have flags on here. Flag if member's age is above or below. Obviously, the above was for elderly exploitation. The below was for people that were using kids' accounts on their own behalf, adults. And that's exactly what we found on our first beta run with a credit union in Appleton. We actually found a 6-year-old account that had multiple ACHs, high amounts of ACHs going through the account, along with a lot of audio response or home banking activity. What we discovered is the parents had actually filed bankruptcy on the credit union, and now we're using the child's account because the credit union missed the joint ownership relationship, using the child's account to transact business. The other thing that you're seeing on this screen is include activity for members with due diligence flags. And we're going to get into that here in a little bit because there's a second part to this. When you go through a BSA audit, one of the things that every good BSA auditor is going to ask you is, number one, do you have high-risk accounts? Yes, we do. Number two, are you actively monitoring them? Hopefully the answer is yes, we do. How do we do it? The system has feature functionality, including this screen, because I could just say, you know what? Select all my high-risk members and just run them through it and show me all the different types of activities relative to the upper high-risk echelon individuals and see if they're raising to the top as being high risk, abnormal. Now, here's the other thing. Why would you want to do that through this platform? You filed a SAR on an individual, and you did it because of cash intensive or other types of activity. You need to continuously monitor them to see, at that 90 to 120 day look back period, do I need to file another SAR? Is there a reason? I need to monitor those continuously, and this is one way of monitoring those that you believe need further monitoring after the first SAR is actually filed. So I'm looking at this screen and I want to know, how should I even start to evaluate what I'm looking at? Where do I start? Well, you could start by clicking or sorting by the number of transactions. I'm not necessarily certain that I would ever start on this screen by sorting on risk level. Just show me all the high risk ones. I may say, no, I want to start on number of transactions. Then from there, I want to go to dollars because I want to see which members show up on this analysis that have had the most amount of money go through the credit union. I could sort on origin. Generally, you're going to sort on origin as you're configuring it to make sure that you've got a good population of the ACH, the debit cards, and things like that. And then you would page down and say, man, there's 50 ACH, there's 4 credit cards, there's 5 debit cards. I need to tweak that to get a better understanding of all the different origin codes that I have. But definitely use this, and I'm not going to ever suggest that you start on risk levels. From the due diligence side of the equation, you can look down. Also on the age side of the equation, you can sort on. So you click on it once, it goes high to low. Click on it twice, it goes low to high. That's where you're going to catch the 6-year-old that did 50 audio response transfers last month. And again, what would I be looking for there? Well, obviously it wasn't the 6-year-old unless they're extremely intelligent and just have a very good financial background at that age. But you would sort on every one of those. Before I go to the next slide, I'm not necessarily certain that I would ever recommend to a credit union that you look at every one of these individuals that show up as high risk. I think when you look at this, because again, we're not trying to create a job here. What we're trying to create is a palette of potentially anomalous activity, people that are just not doing what you believe they should be doing. And that's in the spirit of what these channel analytics are showing you, is to say, no, start from high to low. You may even want to set up a due diligence code of 9. 9 means I looked at that baby last month. I looked at that baby the month before that. I don't need to look at that again. And then sort on the due diligence codes moving forward. That way you're not continuously reviewing the same people month after month after month. Now, if you're going to review those same people month after month after month, then you would want to dig deeper into the diligence codes and actually assign them one that is associated with a risk type or risk category. The process assists credit union determining when transactions are potentially. So this is enhanced due diligence, and we give you the guide here. I'm not sure how many of you today are actually using the enhanced due diligence codes on the system. You can code a member based upon your risk findings or your risk appetite. All members come in at 0. Okay, that's the way that they come in at. Now, a member that comes in and says, I'm an attorney, a doctor, anybody having to do with real estate, that type of thing, marijuana-related businesses now in Michigan, potentially. You can code those, and you can develop these codes using Tool 247. My recommendation on these codes, though, as you develop them, also think of frequency. So your cash-intensive businesses, the ones that, you know, only you know this, but the ones that you have filed 1 or more SARs on, that you really have to keep an eye on, those would be at the Code 1 level. Code 1 means I need to look at them at least once a month. Versus the attorneys, the doctors, all the rest of those high-risk related occupations, they may be a Code 3. In this case, Code 3 may be used then for, I need to look at those once a quarter. You may even go all the way to say once a year. Now, what would I use for once a year? We actually had a credit union for non-domestic aliens who were members of the credit union, and they had to re-verify their visas in the country once a year. They coded them as high risk, and then they used the system to make sure that they were monitoring them, just because of the fact that they could have potentially high amounts of cross-border transactional activity and items like that. You have up to 9 codes. I wouldn't recommend you use all 9. But again, take a look at these. Prior to us having due diligence codes, credit unions use the employee type code. So if you use the employee type code, I think it's time to probably morph that out, because employee type codes are designed to be used for insider member account related activities. Here's an example that we have: low risk, medium risk, high risk, occupational, resident, money service, marijuana, PEPs, potential fraud. Again, there's a lot of different ways you can have this. I asked Emily, the client service the account representative that actually introduced me today. She will be sending you out this PowerPoint today, so if you're taking notes frantically, don't worry. And I do believe they are actually recording this as well. Whether it passes muster with quality control, I never guarantee that, though. So where does the due diligence code go? Update member, tool number 15. I believe it's the second screen in. And this is where you're actually going to assign the due diligence code. Recently, we've had a lot more credit unions get into MBLs, member business lending, and opening up commercial accounts. The amount of due diligence in opening up a commercial account is quite a bit higher than natural person. Most credit unions that are doing it actually have some type of risk rating system that they put in place. You can translate that into this as well. So for new commercial accounts, you could, if you desired, to use the system to say, this is a new commercial account. In 3 months, I need to look at it in accordance with the risk assessment we performed at the time of account opening to make sure they're doing what they told me or the account rep at the beginning of the account opening process. That would maybe only used for a 3-month process. Once you've gone through them and you say, yep, looks good, what they said they were going to do as far as wires, cash intensive activities, debit to card, all those different types of activities, this is exactly what I'm seeing on the account. Now I can just move along. So tool number 402, this is an interesting tool because the data type right now is members with due diligence flags of 2. If I pull that down, the other choice that I have is employee account type code. So, and you're going, well, why did we do that? When we do the review of employees and their accounts here at AuditLink, we view employees as high risk transactional type of accounts because they're gatekeepers. They have access to vital member information. They can post transactions to individuals. They can transfer money throughout the credit union. So when we were developing this, and that was there, we went, well, why wouldn't we just use the same menu option to evaluate accounts with enhanced due diligence flags associated with them? i.e., we don't need to retrain on what credit unions would need to review. So and there's one here that you don't need to check. I would check the teller audit key review. That is everything that came through the teller line as an origin in and of itself, total debits and credits for whatever period you're looking at. Transactional activity review. That's all origin codes, and we're summarizing by all different origins to show you what's going through the account. Account status review. Is the account past due at the current time? Has there been any file maintenance performed on the account? Obviously, that's more important for employees than it is for enhanced due diligence flags. And then file maintenance review. The account access security audit, I would uncheck unless it's for employee review only. So start with the configuring your diligence codes and then go from there, and then actually develop a procedure on how you're going to use it. Don't just say, yeah, I'm using it now, and then associate that procedure into your Bank Secrecy Act policy. Take it all the way up the food chain. And the reason why I say that is right now, one of the biggest things that examiners are writing credit unions up is you're not doing enough as it relates to analyzing anomalous activity. Go buy something. And we're not always winning the argument on the go buy something when you already own something that does a very good job at uncovering anomalous types of activities. Determine how you're going to raise or lower the risk level, and then create a tracker specifically for your reviews so you can pull the reports for your auditors. So call it ED, call it whatever you want, enhanced due diligence tracker. ED's probably not a good one to think about, but consider a lot of different tracker types that you can use. So when the auditor comes in and says, show me that you're doing the work. Show me that you're actually evaluating these individuals on some type of frequency. That tracker report is unbelievably good because this is going to be a memo type under the audit tracker of you performing your enhanced due diligence on an ongoing basis. For those of you who are not familiar, I believe the 2 individuals in a credit union that should be tracker gurus. Number one, the collections department. Number two, the compliance people and the auditors, as it relates to electronically documenting the research and the work that you're doing. I was surprised. I got a call the other day from a credit union that says the auditor wants me to verify that I've gone in and actually done my work on my cash logs. I don't know how to do that. So again, for those of you who have not printed the tracker reports, I would strongly encourage you to understand what type of reports you can actually pull. Here's a sample of what that screen looks like. So the tracker type is AT, the memo type is HR high risk reviews. For those of you who didn't know, you could have an AT and then you could use the tracker type OFAC overrode. What does that mean? It means that during the workflow process of opening up account, adding a co-borrower, on and on and on and on and on, one of your team members entered a name, a social security number, address, and hit enter. The OFAC scan automatically ran and popped up on the screen potential hit. Your internal policy states anytime that happens, the BSA officer or acting manager on duty needs to be notified and alerted to the fact that you may have a terrorist sitting in front of you as you're opening the account. You hope not, but you may. And what are you going to do? Number one, you've already got documented procedures on when that happens. But how do you know, as a compliance professional, that people are telling you or that you are paying attention to when it happens? Yep, could be on the end SDN list, and you know what? They just hit override, updated the little tracker record, and moved along. Now, again, don't go screaming, out the door saying, "Man, I should have been doing this all along." Because the other thing you need to understand is that every Saturday we are running a total scan against all your members. It will show up Monday. You might have a few days where you didn't get alerted, but so use it more as an audit tool to say, are people doing what our policy states? Don't get all excited to think, yeah, we've got a terrorist, we've been doing business with them for years, because the Saturday scan would have caught it. So I don't want to excite everybody as it relates to that. With that said, we've got some contact information. Marcia's still out there. If you want to contact Marcia, contact her at CU Northwest. She is also a guru as it relates to abnormal activity monitoring. I'm going to throw this out there for the group. Just configure it. And configure it and then run it once. Then call me. Call me and say, Jim, take a look at what I've done. What would you recommend I change? We have an actual offering through AuditLink to set this up for credit unions. And we'll actually do the work for you. I'm actually thinking of getting rid of that offering and saying, no, I just want everybody using this right now. So again, just take a whack at it if you're not using it. Run it. Get me on the phone. I'll set up a Zoom session with you. We'll review what you've done. I'll go through and say, yeah, from a best practice perspective, you don't have enough of this. You got too much of that. And now what do you actually do when you run it? It should not take you more than 30 minutes to an hour each month to review the abnormal activity monitoring. If it does, it's too long. But what you will find will amaze you. It will simply amaze you to say, we were on the ball on that one, but that one's been riding outside of our scope for months. And we really do need to dig in to determine what that individual member or corporation or trust account or whatever else it might be was doing. So again, I always feel uncomfortable when I can't use Gold to actually run it, but from the most part I can't, because the only way that I could do that is to show actual member data, and that's kind of why I'm throwing it back at you as well to say, you know, over the next week or so before the end of year and you guys get really busy, just take a crack at it. One final thing. Abnormal activity monitoring is going to be one of CU Answer's largest investments in 2019, where we are going to develop additional rules. We are going to run it automatically on a frequency of potentially daily. We are going to automatically create alerts for you to work, much like your BSA log. AuditLink is actually going to get in the business of doing the work for credit unions as well, as we always do with everything. So we feel your pain. We're closest to the programming staff and the writing staff, and we can actually develop it. So again, start using it today, because what you will see over time is a very large investment from CU Answers in this arena for fraud management, AML, and BSA management as well. Sandra, is there a way to create a follow-up without turning the audit tracker yellow? I'm not certain of that, but I'll look at it. And then Amber's asking, is it being recorded for others to watch? Amber, it is. However, it has to pass our quality control. 98% of the time I do, and I don't think I dropped any bad words today, so I think it will. And once it is, it'll be published out on the CUTV. Any other questions? Take care, everybody.